The Detroit Red Wings outplayed the Columbus Blue Jackets at the Stadium Series game, but they did not win it. Brian Fisher is here to talk about that, what the team needs to fix, and what to expect from them at the trade deadline. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Red Wings, Brian Fisher. And Brian, pretty exciting game in Columbus, but not the outcome the Red Wings wanted, even though they thoroughly outshot the Columbus Blue Jackets. You were there. Talk to me about that game.
Yeah, it was the most exciting 1 minute of my life there in the third period when they tied it up 3-3, and I was like, yeah, overtime, and then controversy then followed that. Yeah, the game was, honestly, I thought the Red Wings played really, really well in that hockey game, and it was a perfect response from what they had on Thursday. They laid an egg at LCA on Thursday. They looked tired. They looked exhausted, and Blue Jackets looked energized. They were forechecking like crazy, and McClellan challenged the team to respond, and I thought they did in pretty much every single facet. You know, obviously the shot attempts is what's going to attract everyone's eye immediately. Detroit outshot them 46-21, but the actual the shot attempts, right? Your Corsi share at 5-on-5. 56-27 in favor of Detroit. It was a 71% expected goals for share for Detroit. Like in every single conceivable statistical category, Detroit should have won this hockey game, but they did not. And there's several factors for that. One of the main reasons being, okay, that controversial call, right? Like, let's address that. That was a high stick, and it should have been called. That final goal with 2 minutes left that the Columbus Blue Jackets scored should not have counted. But to solely blame that loss, I mean, obviously that was the biggest reason. Like, if there was like a percentage of a pie chart, that'd be like probably 66%. But the Red Wings they gave up 4 goals on 20 shots. There's so much more to the story when you're looking at it like that. That's unacceptable, and it goes into a bigger problem that this team is having, where they have the offense, but right now, if their goaltending's not bailing them out, which is capable of doing it on some nights, but not consistently. Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon are a fine tandem, but they're probably around middle of the league at best. They're going to have off nights, and so if the goaltending's not bailing them out, they're going to allow 3 to 4 bad goals a night because they're simply too soft in their own zone. They're simply too soft in front of their own net.
How much of that is the defensemen themselves, and how much of that is the forwards not coming back to help out, or is it positioning? What's the root cause of this defensive breakdown?
All of it. Detroit's forward group is very offensive oriented, and right now they're hurting down the middle with Andrew Kopp done for the season. He's a very good two-way center. Now, I know a lot of Red Wings fans will scoff at me praising Andrew Kopp because his production isn't great, but there's no way you can deny the defensive acumen that he brings to the team as a center. He's one of your most, if not your most responsible defensive forwards you have on the team. So JT Compher's back there in the second line. He's filling it nicely, but Michael Rasmussen was out after taking a headshot from Jack Hughes against the Devils a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, about a week ago now. He should be coming back soon, but you're missing 2 centers down the middle, so the center depth's kind of thin. So you've had your lineups be a little bit out of sync because of that, although the second line provided all 3 goals in that game, DeBrincat with 2 goals and Patrick Kane with a goal and 3 points himself. But it affects everywhere down the lineup. And then in the defensive zone, I think you're seeing, as good as Albert Johansson and Simon Edvinsson have been in their rookie seasons, or it's basically a rookie season for Edvinsson. He's not technically a rookie. I think you're seeing the wear and tear of a full NHL season starting to affect that pair. The last week or so, maybe 2 weeks going back before the Four Nations break, it feels like in the defensive zone, they're starting to get outworked a little bit. And for a guy of Edvinsson's size, he needs to be able to use his body more successfully. I think to that power play goal the Red Wings allowed, the league worst penalty kill. Second best power play, but league worst penalty kill for the Detroit Red Wings. That goal's prevented if Simon Edvinsson just simply lifts the stick. If he just lifts the stick of the forward out front, that goal doesn't happen. Justin Holl and Gustafsson, right? That's another big sore point, is that defensive pair. That third pair for Detroit is really tough. Really tough to watch, I should say. And McClellan clearly doesn't trust them because in crunch time, he won't deploy them. They play maybe 12 minutes a night on most nights. And you saw that in the third goal they allowed. 30 seconds after they scored the second in the go-ahead goal, Justin Holl and Gustafsson get confused, get mixed up behind the net. Cam Talbot's on the wrong post, and just a simple, just jam it home goal. Something completely preventable. So defensive depth is really mightily affecting this team, but I don't think the forwards necessarily help either, because a lot of your forwards, like I said, are very offensive oriented outside of the couple guys that I listed that are out of the lineup. And they don't necessarily do a whole lot in the offensive zone to help the defense with outlet passes. Just not really getting to their spots in time, not really successfully transitioning up the ice. And then if they do get the puck to the neutral zone, it's a lot of dump and chase. And a lot of times they're losing that race after dumping, so they turn the puck right back over. So very, very much glass cannon offense, right? You're going to score a lot of goals, but you might also give up a lot of goals. And it's just they got to get tougher in their own end. They got to be able to shut things down more consistently. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything in terms of the defense.
Right now, Detroit in the second wild card spot as we record this episode. The trade deadline is a few days away. What do you expect the Red Wings to be looking for, and what do you expect them to be willing to give up at the trade deadline?
So it's no secret that Detroit's not like a Stanley Cup contender, right? This is a team that's still trying to make a playoff berth after missing for, 8 straight seasons, something like along those lines. So this is a team, though, I think that is strongly out of selling phase. This is a team that wants to make the playoffs. So you're not going to be going out there and acquiring Seth Jones, right, who's already been acquired by the Florida Panthers. But just as an example, you weren't going to make that kind of deal, giving up a promising young goaltender and a first-round pick. You're not going to be giving up anything unless if you're going to get anyone with term, it's going to be somebody who's young and already has that term. Somebody that you don't mind giving up extra assets for because you know they're going to be here for a while. No rentals, nothing of that matter unless it's cheap. So I think you're going to be going after guys like Dylan Cousins, who maybe could use a change of scenery. There have been strong reports all season long about the Detroit Red Wings' pursuit of Dylan Cousins. He's 23, big body center, position of need, already locked up. The only bugaboo with that is his term, right? It's 7. He's got a 7-year deal. I think he's in year 2 of it at $7 million, and his production hasn't met that price mark. But we've seen a lot of people leave Buffalo and then have success elsewhere, and all of his other tools speak to that. That's in there still. So unless you're going out there and getting a young guy with term already, you're likely just going to be attacking depth forwards or depth defensemen, which is still a huge area of need. I just listed all about how the bottom 2 pairs on Detroit Red Wings defense is bad. Go out there and get a everyday third pair defenseman or an everyday third or fourth line winger who will help provide either depth scoring or better defense in your own zone. And that'll go a long ways. If you can have a third pair that you can trust to put out there, that'll go a long way into how it affects the deployments of these other 2 pairs. You won't be running those other 2 pairs into the ground because you're afraid of putting your third pair out there. You'll be able to give Edvinsson and Johansson a little bit of a rest here as the season begins to wear on them as they're in their first full NHL season. So really, I think that's probably the most likely thing, is acquiring depth pieces. I know the popular name around the league for forward was Trent Frederick, but now he's week to week with an injury, so I don't know what the situation there is. Defensively, I haven't really looked at the defensive depth candidates that they could acquire, but if there is somebody out there that is available, I really think that a depth defenseman who will help solidify that bottom pair could be a huge area of need. Other than that, it's somebody young with term on a team that doesn't think it's going to work out.
And what are they willing to give up at this point?
They have an extra third-round pick. That's why I think that the depth is probably more likely. They have extra, later-round picks. They have a ton of prospects that aren't necessarily top of the line. Like, you have Antti Tuomisto, William Wallander, guys who have NHL ceilings but might not be huge impact players. They have a ton of guys under contract that, if you're selling to a team if you're trying to buy a player from a team that's selling, you could maybe guys like Joe Veleno. I like Michael Rasmussen personally, but even Michael Rasmussen, guys of that nature who are under term, under team control, in Veleno's case, you might be able to exchange that for a guy in a deal where you're trying to get somebody with term just to make the cap space work. But I mean, I'm just riffing here. They have a lot of prospects. They have a lot of late round picks, but I don't think we're in a position yet to trade away a first round pick or trade away a top tier prospect because the team's just not in win now mode. They're in make the playoffs and have this team take that step forward mode.
All right. Well, it's going to be an interesting week. I know you'll have it covered every step of the way. Brian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Yeah, you can find me over at Locked On Red Wings, at Brian Fisher, LORW, on both Blue Sky and Twitter. Scotty is at Bentley Scotty on both platforms as well. And we are at LO_Red Wings on Twitter and at LO Red Wings on Blue Sky because they don't allow underscores in their ats. So that's where you can find us. And of course, anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com.